This is terrifying, right? Okay, it's always nice to be in Vancouver. Okay, I'm gonna quickly. I mean, maybe you have heard me talk before, but I'm going to go through where I came from. So you've probably heard that one before, some of you. What we're doing now, and then a couple of ideas about the future. So pay attention. I've got 140 slides, so I'm going to go really quickly, right? And you should be finished in under half an hour if I can keep up a pace, right? So, I started off in London in a very miserable time in the UK, but it was a kind of exciting time from a youth culture perspective. We had skinheads, we had punks, we had glam rock, we had new romantics, all in quick succession. And I think what I learned, particularly from this era, was when I was a pre-teen, if you like, was that actually you could get away with quite a lot without any training and without any skill. So I'm going to, so there's the glam rock, there's the new romantics. And so the very early work was, and I showed this with no pride, it was really quite ugly, and it was primitive, and it was dangerous, and it was rusty, but it was very much mine. And I think, in a way, the hardest thing, particularly in this day and age, is to keep a unique personality. I think it's so hard to, when you're assaulted with all of the imagery, to actually be yourself. So this was very much me. Nobody else was doing this at the time, luckily. But it was kind of interesting because immediately I realized that there was an alchemy in making stuff, mainly because people started buying it. So I never really had a theoretical moment where I was at college doing it, actually paying to do design. I was almost paid to make things from the very beginning because people started buying them. The things were very cheap, so I've never really divided the commerce and the making of stuff in the way that a lot of other people have. Anyway, so I keep on making stuff. They become even rougher. It's made from found objects, so complete recycling. I move on very quickly to making things out of in series, so buying things from plumbing shops and from cooking shops. I buy some machinery for my studio, and so the things are then defined mainly by the machines that I buy. Here's a guillotine, so I start slicing up metal and everything becomes very slicey. My welding improves. You can see my welding becoming much more sophisticated. And welding's an amazing thing because it allows you to make things very quickly. I think you're all quite woody here in Vancouver, but I never had the patience for wood, which you need to wait for things to glue. You have to cut things very precisely. With metal, you can be very fast. And I think in the end, the thing that was interesting for me was the ability to produce many things, to practice many things. So you can see I've gone through maybe 5 years, but the work has evolved through mainly just practice and like I say, getting better at welding, and then learning myself the value of triangulation and structural engineering. I was so here you see the work gets a bit more sculptural and a bit more possibly elegant. We're still using found objects, so this is the steering wheel from a Golf Volkswagen. And I'm in England at a time where there's very little design culture. There's no design museum, there's no design publications, there's not even Sunday supplements on design. But it's at that time that I'm kind of dug up by the Italians that have come over to London to try and find a bit of fresh air. And Cappellini, an amazing company, put this chair into production. You can see it's become very sophisticated, much better finished. It's definitely lost a bit of the British charm, but it's become, as a result, commercial, because this one's upholstered in rubber inner tube, so it's a bit smelly. It's a very effective upholstery material, but people don't like a grubby second-hand bit of rubber, or something. Well, not everybody anyway. So here we have the chair that then gives me a slightly more international reputation. It also teaches me what design is, because until that time I'm not really thinking of myself particularly as a designer. But the Italians really understand the value of design into industry and how it really transforms people's desire for objects. So the Italians teach me a lot. I get bored of working for them because I can't really make a living. I then go on and make my own plastics company. So this is my first plastic object, again defined by the manufacturing process of rotational molding. I'd love a bottle of water, if anybody's got one. I give up designing for 10 years and join a big corporation. So I worked for a company called Habitat as a creative director, and it's a company a bit like Crate and Barrel with 70 shops that go from doing toys to textiles, tableware, and furniture and lighting. And I learned a lot about logistics and about creative direction. It's owned by IKEA at the time, so I jumped from being a self-producing designer maker to working for the biggest furniture corporation in the world. And after 10 years of corporate life, I'm sick of it, and I jump ship. I've had kind of maybe, thanks a lot, 7 or 8 lives, like, design lives. And it's time to try a new model, to try and define a different way of being a designer. Because none of them really suit me, So what I do is I create my own label, my own brand, if you like. I have a brandable name. Not everybody's so lucky. But the reason I do this is because of the state of the furniture industry. So you all know Vitra, sold very well here. The desks over there, I think, are Vitra, and it's a kind of an amazing company. But this is a typical situation for a designer. They have maybe 30, 40, 50 designers, some of them dead, some of them alive, all working in this collection. You can see all the clashing colours and shapes. So for a designer, it's not a very good environment to thrive and really put together your ideas and explain them properly, right? So the reason we did kind of create a brand and do it like this is because actually I think it's a much nicer way to actually put together and express your ideas. So I've got my own brand, and I'm actually weirdly majority owned by private equity, so I don't actually even own myself. So it could all go terribly wrong. And I could easily see my name floating off in the way that Martin Margell has seen it happen. So we do furniture, we do lighting, and we do accessories, and that's already a huge amount of variety in terms of things to ship and things to certify and lots of different materials, plastic, wood, metal, and glass. But we have a great time, particularly in lighting at the moment, because lighting is such an exciting field, being driven very much by amazing advances in technology, which is always the best place to work if you're a designer. But also, what's good is, I think from a customer perspective, people are prepared to be more daring in lighting than they are in furniture at the moment. So it's kind of an amazing place to work, because people want to see the modern in lighting. So you can use more interesting textures and more interesting shapes. And we play a lot with the lighting effects and a lot with the surface of the objects as well. This is a recent series called Melt Light, which is made with a really high-tech technique called vacuum metallizing, where you explode a small piece of aluminium in a vacuum chamber and coat the inside of the lamp with a really thin, 2-micron thick coating of aluminium, which is semi-transparent, to be able to create all of these amazing internal reflections. And what's quite nice is when the lamp is off, it acts as a solid, and when it's on, it has all of these internal kind of icy reflections. So lighting is good and lighting is exciting. And we've more recently gone into a lot of accessories, which sort of broadens out our opportunity to play with lots of shapes and materials, and also broadens out the kind of clients that we can, that can't afford maybe a chandelier or a sofa. And so it gives us a much broader sweep also of typologies and shapes that we can work in, whether we're doing tea or coffee, or desk accessories, or flower arranging, or even working in borosilicate and different materials. So it's kind of nice to have this extra series of languages of shapes and materials that we can work into. Here's heavily carved glass, which are in 2 layers, where we cut through to get the translucence, ceramics, marble, where we're working on things that even weights for exercise or boards for chopping. So kind of nice to do accessories, and sometimes even showing my softer side of textiles. So it's been great to have all of these adventures, and it allows me never to get bored, because you can tell I get bored very easily. I'm even discovering new materials like this three-dimensional marbling material that we've just found in one of our marble factories, where the colour goes all the way through. Because we do furniture, and in a way the furniture we've probably neglected a bit over the last couple of years, and although we've done a lot of very sculptural furniture, and we like doing things like seating, and we've brought back some of those much earlier works into our collection, taking them back from the Italians. It's a kind of, furniture is still a big love of mine, as you can tell, and I like misusing furniture. And of course, chairs are a particularly important typology because they're so close to the human body. They have legs and arms and feet and backs, and they're so appealing to a design, if you like. But anyway, so it's difficult doing a chair. There's so many of them about. And so what we're doing here actually is we're here doing what we wouldn't normally do, which is launching a series of furniture in America first, North America first. And you're pretty much the third lot of people to see it. So we started in Portland, Seattle yesterday, and now here in Vancouver. You're the first Canadians ever to see this chair. And what we would normally do is we'd show them in Milan in the furniture fair in April. But instead of doing that, we've done a pre-launch here in America and putting America first. Yeah. So these chairs are really defined by our needs, our personal needs. I couldn't find a bar stool that was comfortable. I wanted to make a series where the hang on. Oh. I know, so we made a little film, a little digital film to try and explain a bit more what this range of chairs is all about. So, it's about the back, a good lumbar support is what you need. A really fat seat, maybe. And then some thicker legs, more structurally sound. To try and make just those three components as big and as generous as possible. And to put them together in a really simple way. So the difficult thing with chairs is actually getting any personality into a relatively minimal chair, and getting one to do a bar stool, a lounge, and a dining chair in roughly the same shape as what we wanted. So that's what we've managed to do, and that's kind of why we're doing this little tour, to try and pre-launch the stuff in America first. Okay. So, and also these lamps, and actually weirdly it's the 100th anniversary of the Bauhaus, and I think we might have turned out some modernist furnishings for the first time. So you get the quite simple, almost like for the first time I'm doing form following function, maybe. So that's quite fortuitous, if you like. We stripped back also the colours to be quite monochromatic this year, to really concentrate on the shapes and the functions. It's just another. Yeah, so this shows also the lights. I mean, we've been guilty a bit of making lights that don't really output a lot of light. So this season we're trying to be as luminous as possible, and we're integrating the LEDs into the lamp so that they conform to Californian regulations, right? Yeah, so that's that. Just going to move on. So that's kind of what we're doing and what we're doing here and what we're doing at the moment. I just wanted to talk a bit about some of the slightly more conceptual ways that we develop furniture. I think the robots are kind of interesting right now. It's a big obsession with rapid manufacturing, rapid prototyping, and the robots are actually coming along to take your jobs. So we need to find ways to exploit them before they exploit us. And I've turned to this very sophisticated metalworking robot, which I kind of favour. It's called a Trump. It's actually branded Trump. It's a Trump robot. You can just about see the logo up there. But it's very versatile. And these machines could make America great again. So we're in a position where the digitalization of sheet metal machinery has allowed designers to get much closer to all of the amazing different possibilities of these machines, which have a much lower cost of tooling. And if you're careful and if you under-design, you design into the capabilities of the machine, you can pretty much make a whole object out of one machine. So we took this machine to Milan 5 years ago and made a couple of hundred chairs just by really reducing the amount of design we put in and really thinking about what the robot could do and trying to make a chair that had the characteristics of the machine's capability. And so here's our machine in the railway station in Milan, which is now a science museum. And here I'm holding aloft my first chair very proudly. And here are the chairs that are the result of this project. And here they are in the 19th century monastery, which is also part of the Science Museum, where we made a whole restaurant with screens and chairs and lamps, actually in front of the clientele. So we're moving to a world now where we can do deconstructed manufacturing, and this lamp that you see here is actually just made with the same machine. So you can program it to do completely different objects, make them small or make them big according to the parameters of the customer. Make a custom pattern, for instance, as well. So it's kind of nice that we're able to. We made these in Brazil, we made them in New York, we made them in Germany, and we made them in London as well. That designers can do that, from their laptops now and just send files around the world and make these industrialized objects in a way that was impossible before. So we may get back to the medieval high street where people are actually making things much more locally. This is another project which I'll just run through really quickly, which is it was initially a not-for-profit project, which turned a bit more profitable, where we were working with street metal workers in Lagos and some in Jaipur as well. And really the idea was to try and maintain local craftsmen. So these are street metal workers, and they're gradually losing their skills as the objects that they used to make are being replaced by these much more industrialized equivalents, much cheaper, much lighter. And so the project was to try and just divert the skills into a more contemporary, sellable typology. So we made this series of lamps, which have become quite popular, and we've been selling them for 12 or more years. There's 20 or 30 people in northern India, in Moradabad, which is a Muslim town, making these objects now. And they've been really good for us. What you do see that a lot of them on the internet and even in Vancouver, they're actually nothing to do with us. So this is eBay. Of course, we don't sell on eBay. So there's maybe 20 pages like this of lamps that have nothing to do with us. So there's definitely a more significant Tom Dixon business out there which is nothing to do with us. And, when I see the coffee shop down the road and the rest of it, it's kind of it's caused us quite a lot of problems. I mean, of course, it's quite hard to protect your design and. Yeah, so you see them all over the place, and even I can say that it's probably influenced quite a lot of other things as well. So you see this bowl from IKEA, which is made actually, 2 million units a year. I saw their factory in northern India. Of course, these are not made out of brass, hand hammered. They're industrially produced in aluminium. But it's kind of good if you do want to have a cheap, fake Tom Dixon. It's probably better to go to IKEA and do like these hackers do, which is. So I love the Tom Dixon lights, but the price tag doesn't love me. So I tried the cheapest but yet good-looking copy of them, price tag $28. So not a bad version there, right? So this kind of inspired me to go and see IKEA and to talk to them about actually working together with them. I had this idea that I could do a coffin with them. So this was my presentation to them, and they just said no. So I did make the coffin. So here's my papier-mâché coffin, but it sparked off this conversation with IKEA, where I had this idea that I might be try and take on the biggest furniture company in the world and be like a David and Goliath and actually exploit them to my own ends, which I attempted to do. So I'll tell you that story. I wanted to do a bed. We're not doing beds because they're kind of complicated. And they wanted me to do a sofa, and I didn't want to do a sofa. But sofas are interesting because even the highest end sofas have really poor quality frames underneath all of the foam and the textile. as do IKEA. So we decided that what we do is try and industrialize a frame, and we looked at aluminium specifically because it was strong and light and durable. And we worked with a lot of engineers from the Volvo truck company, and deciding on extrusion, which has got all kinds of functionalities, and really added all of this hidden functionality inside the extrusions to try and actually encourage people to hack and divert the use of this bed frame. So this is the object, and it's actually been launched into IKEA. It's a very plain and simple enclosure, a platform, if you like. And there's a very strong analogy to, I'd say, an iPhone. You can see actually it's exactly the same shape. But also the idea that you buy the phone and you add your own music, you add your own maps, you add your own functionalities onto it is what I was interested in, and see if we couldn't do that in the furniture world as well. So here you have your bed, and you can just change it to suit your rapidly evolving life. I mean, what we learned from IKEA is how fragmented people's lives are and how often they change. And of course, you don't want people to throw away their furniture when they move house. So the idea of trying to make a whole system that allows you to build and change your objects as it evolves into different, you might become gay, you might become, you'll definitely become old. You might have more children, and etc. So you're able to, as your life transforms, and people have different families, shapes that your bed or your sofa can evolve with you. So that's the plan, and the things in the shops. It's been reasonably successful. It's even more exciting when we opened it up to 2 or 3 art colleges around the world, master's courses. And we had 70 students working on hacking the object, and they came up with all of these ridiculous ideas, like making it into a roof rack or making it into a tree house, and some more sophisticated ideas like putting a tent to stop the electromagnetic waves. We really did discover that the student community right now is terrified of living, basically. So see, here we see the bed is raised off the floor so that you can hide underneath your bed if you're attacked. And somebody else put an inflatable mattress so you could float away if there was a tsunami. So the poor students of today are really living in fear. Here's an outdoor cover, which is done by an aftermarket sofa company. And here's my own cover, much more shaggy, kind of Icelandic sheepskin. But of course, my whole project failed on the basis that the bed sold out immediately in IKEA. They under-ordered it, and I'm left with all of my shaggy covers. So if anybody wants a sheepskin coat, yeah. And then I'm just going to talk about one last little project which we're doing at the moment, which is an underwater furniture factory, or rather an underwater furniture farm. And the idea is really based on a technology with a 1970s scientist called Wolf Hilbert, who was fantasizing about growing whole cities underwater. And he managed to develop a technique called a biorock, which allows you to make, with a metal framework, something which resembles reinforced concrete. So I've gone to the Bahamas, which is where you need to do it. It's too cold in Vancouver to do this project. And you dip in the sea your frameworks, and you charge them with a small amount of solar energy. And on the frameworks grows what's called an accretion of calcium carbonate. So the minerals are attracted to the framework by the power, and it very quickly becomes a very benign environment for sea life. You can see sponges and seaweeds and all kinds of things going. Here I'm fishing the chair out after a year to inspect it. And here you see, after maybe 4 years, that the very comfortable and practical chair that I've designed. It's kind of interesting how big the amount of it's effectively limestone grows on it, and in fact you're getting up to 8 inches of accretion after 4 years, which is kind of interesting. So there you have my kind of underwater factory, and of course it's got all kinds of added benefits. Particularly, you can graft on broken corals onto the framework, and they can grow at an increased rate as well. So there's another. The Coral Reef Alliance, which is an organisation that is trying to regenerate coral reefs And they've managed to make coral grow really fast. So my future really is in underwater furniture farming, and so this is a much bigger reef which I'll create, which will allow me to grow furniture underwater in these frameworks that will stay permanently underneath, and I can pluck a few chairs occasionally like fruit in the forest and sell them on the international art market. How about, Nancy, you ready? Yeah, okay. So that's what we do, and we do it all here in London in a place called the Coal Office. So we've just moved to this amazing, so if you're ever in London, please come and visit us. We've tried to make the place as open as possible, and it's this whole building that sweeps around on the canal opposite St. Martin's School of Art, which is the biggest art school in Europe. And what we do there is we have obviously a showroom, but I didn't really want a showroom. It's a very slow business, the furniture business. I wanted a shop and a showroom and a restaurant all combined. And also to try and get the designers in front of the public as well. So we use it, this is a space called the Factory, which we use to prototype things and also to have events like we're doing here. And here we're prototyping actually 2020, so you're seeing here in Vancouver the first time what will happen in the future. Yeah. So that's a secret photograph. And here is kind of what we try and do inside. So the reason I'm telling you about our headquarters is really because one of the things that we tested out in London was our collaboration with Teenage Engineering. So I wanted to tell you a bit more about the teenage engineers. They're very much not teenagers, unfortunately. They're actually Swedish middle-aged men. Sorry. And they're over there. And I think, rather than just keep on droning on about what I do, it'd be it's kind of nice, and what we try and do in this place is to not really talk so much about furniture or products or the rest of it. We talk about how we live. And for us, it was really important. Some days we're perfumiers, we do smells. And some days we do, we do interior design. And interior design, you need to be conscious not just of what a place looks like, but what it smells like and what it sounds like. It's really important to have an attitude towards acoustics, for instance. So I don't really see all of these things as separate. And what's kind of nice about Teenage Engineering is that they're actually synthesizer makers. But they don't act like a synthesizer manufacturer at all. They act like a design company, because that's what they really are. So these amazing machines that you're going to start making some noise with, do you want to put down a beat, are actually used by professionals, right, because they're so complex. But what Teenage Engineering have managed to do is to actually make them appealing to the non-musician as well. So you should gather around and see what they do. Simon, do you want to tell anybody a bit more about what you actually do? I'm struggling here. They're quite good at interfaces, basically. So this is the cow interface.
Do I need a microphone, or should I just cuddle up?
No.
Perfect. Hello. Ooh, this is scary, isn't it? So yeah, we're Teenage Engineering, and what you're going to hear tonight is this. It's called the OPZ, or the OPZ, depending where you are. We've recently released this. It's a sequencer, so it sequences things. And what you'll hear it and see it sequencing tonight will be music, beats, videos, lights, and photos. So all of that controlled through this, and you're starting to hear a little bit of the beat now. We believe passionately in sharing the love of music through our machines. That's what we do. And we're also partnering in this kind of environment so that we can tour and bring on people to perform with us that have never performed with us before. Most of the music, in fact, all of the music that you listen to is highly polished, right? That's what you listen to. You're not going to listen to highly polished music tonight. So we have Scott and Chip, who are going to be performing with us tonight. We've never played together before, have we? From Vancouver. Yeah, thank you. And we will make some mistakes. There will be some atrocities, no doubt. And there'll be minor glimpses of brilliance. So on all of those, if you give us a round of applause, that's cool. I'll be the one that's on the far corner there, and you're quite welcome to come along and talk to us as we're playing. I can show you a little bit more what's doing it, and if you want to press and turn and move some buttons, then you're very welcome to do that as well.
But before that, I've actually peaked a bit early. Nancy says we have to ask questions. I'm really sorry, teenage engineering. That was, I've kind of...
Yes, we thought it would be good to have some questions, but just before we go to questions, another one of our Vancouver partners for this event is Tom Lee Music. So I want to thank them very much for their contribution also. Take a few questions?
Yeah, of
You
course,
okay with that? Questions? Oh, right there. I'm got my eye out there.
Make it easy. Thank you, Tom. Absolutely beautiful stuff. Tom, you mentioned the transformation of design in England in the 1970s and 80s, and when the Italians came over and they were trying to tinker with design. Like, what was that transformation like through that period, and how did the culture of design, what was the foundation that was laid throughout those years?
The transformation of British design, or...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, well... I don't know, the UK turned from being a very inward-looking country, which was quite nostalgic, to actually being much more open. I mean, we're closing down again at the moment, you may have noticed. But there was the Eurotunnel opened, and London particularly became immensely cosmopolitan and was full of people coming over to study or to practice art. And there was a huge... the Tate Modern opened, and the finance sector exploded, and all of these things feed things like design. You need some money. You need people that commission stuff. You need connection into culture, and you need fresh air and fresh blood in a place for design to thrive. Right. So there was always a vibrant art school culture, and that's vanishing rapidly as people have to pay for their education. But for a long time, art school was free, so there was a lot of creatives out there. And the UK had this really odd combination of being really strong in many different sectors, in finance, in arts, and it all happened around about the same time. Does that answer your question? I've forgotten what it was. Yeah,
Other questions? Oh, okay. Where am I going?
Hi, Tom. I'm from Manchester. I'm an industrial designer. Andrew King. It felt like the Hacienda nightclub in here when I first walked in Manchester. Only the old dudes will know what that means. Hacienda nightclub. Did you ever go there?
Yeah, I played there in a band, actually. Yeah.
Really? Cool. I just wondered how influential Terence Conran was on you when you were there, and who you would say influenced you as you were kind of developing into a designer. So who was your kind of favorite designer and favorite influential artist?
Okay, well, I don't think, I didn't know anything about design when I started, so I can't say I was influenced by designers at all. And I'd never been to Habitat as a kid, and I didn't really know much about Terence Conran. But what he did do was to provide a kind of an amazing landscape, which then I inhabited when I got my job at Habitat. So after that, I researched him, and I knew his children, so I knew him as a dad, not as an influential designer. But what he was an amazing retailer, actually, and a very creative retailer at that, and an amazing curator as well, and an entrepreneur. So I think I learned a lot from the structures that he built, and definitely working at Habitat was a formative period of my life. I mean, having come from music and not really having an interest at all in design, I was more influenced, and I think definitely by the music business and the way that works. I think that there was it's a great place to learn self-determination. You pick up an instrument, you teach yourself that, you make your own songs, and you get on stage and you know, you perform, you make your own gigs and the rest of it. And I kind of transferred that into metalwork, actually. But, you know, I could cite 1,000 amazing influences from the world of music or the world of sculpture particularly, which is something I'm very fond of, or engineering. But I won't bore you. I'll send you an email.
Any other questions?
The more questions you ask, the less music you'll get.
I think maybe we're going to vote for music. What do you say? I vote for music. Thank you, Tom. Yay.